Now, hi everybody. My name is Luke, and welcome to my first official YouTube live stream. The title of this live stream is Building Groups Transforms Our World. I'd like to offer some curiosities and life experiences and opportunities to build together in this live stream. I hope that whether you're coming together and watching it live with me now or checking out the recording at a later time, that you see this as an opportunity for building together onward, not just a one and done opportunity like participating in this live stream or viewing the recording, but as an opportunity to keep creating and, in the spirit of today's topic, to keep building groups. Let's wonder about that now, building groups. Take a moment, and I'd like to ask you just to kind of ponder or reflect for a moment. Think of communities or groups that you have been a part of and building in your life. And think about not only the kinds of groups you've been building, whether it's been at work or within your family or within a hobby or interest of yours. But now I'd like you to think a little bit about how this community, this group comes together. How is it growing? How does it build things together? How does it create together? So take a minute and think about one or more groups you've been a part of and how you've created that group. What's brought you together and how have you built the group? Okay, great. Definitely keep in mind or keep thinking about some of the groups you've been a part of. Today, I'd like us to wonder about the power of building groups as a practice of human development and community and social change. I'd like to give us a very powerful and provocative offer, which is we're stronger when we focus on building groups. We're supporting our collective development when we build groups together. Probably that isn't the first time you've ever heard that. There are everyday expressions in English like strength in numbers or the power of the group or there's no I in team kind of feeling. While those expressions may be part of our everyday language, I'm not sure we practice building groups. I think we often feel like putting people together, say, as students in a classroom or coworkers in a job, and say, you're doing this group project, or having people who are legally or genetically related and calling them a group assumes a particular assumption of you'll build the group by dint of the membership you have in that group. In other words, you're all students trying to complete the coursework for this particular class, and you've been assigned a group project. So go ahead and create that group, create that project. You're all tasked with a certain job responsibility. So you and your coworkers form a group and take on that responsibility. You're all members of a family. And so, by dint of the fact that you all share family history, family resemblances, family stories, you're a group. I'm not suggesting we're not inherently groups. I guess I'm suggesting that culturally, particularly in Western cultures, we've often not supported the how to build those groups, that we've rested or resulted in the assumption that groups form by dint of membership or particular identity labels like family member or colleague or classmate, or even in other ways by dint of saying, well, we're all part of a community, and by dint of those identity labels like gender or sexual orientation or race, we're already a group, a community. I'd like to invite us to move beyond group membership and group building as a reflection of identity. And instead, I'd like to offer us some wonders about the power and possibilities of building groups, and not just doing so by coming together, but by creating together. And in fact, this idea of creating together shifts it from the focus of individual contributions, like what someone brings to the group, or what someone's strengths are for the group, or what someone needs from the group, to what the group can create together. Another provocative shift I'd like us to make about building groups is the power of not knowing how to do something. And in this case, not knowing how to build the group, and not knowing what the group is creating and what it all is about or what it all means. I would suggest that the focus then on building groups and collectively letting go of knowing how to do it and knowing what the meaning or outcome is of such activity is a catalyst for human development across the lifespan and for community and social change. That now being said, I'd like to ask us, well, then how might we do that? Even though I just said a moment ago, it's okay not to know how to do it. Despite that not knowing and needing to know how to do things, we can still draw upon cultural historical tools in order to create the groups emergently, non knowingly, and developmentally. For the focus of this live stream, I thought we could focus on two particular cultural historical tools, or in this case, cultural historical activities that can support building groups emergently, developmentally, and collectively. The two tools that I'd love to focus on for this live stream are the tools of improvisational theater, also known as improv, or in some parts of the world also known as impro. And the second tool is the practice of social therapeutics. Let me talk a little bit about each one, and I'll do so in three ways. One, I'll give a general sense of what that tool might be and how people might use or know or be familiar with that term. Second, I'll bring in some theory or practices of that both come from my longstanding research, teaching, and activism. And then third, I'll also bring in some personal experience from that. Those won't necessarily come in a particular order, but I'd like to sprinkle my discussion of each tool with those three parts. Let's take up improvisational theater, improv, or impro first. Improvisational theater often is what people think of when they think of comedy, and they're not too far off to think so. We often hear of people who have studied or learned the practices of improv and are well known comedians, comedic actors, writers, or in some ways involved in the arts. When people are involved in the activity of improvisational theater or improv or impro, their activity is to build a story or a game together without a predetermined script, but together create the story, create the game, create the practice. And this can be done both as a rehearsal and as a performance in front of a paying or volunteer audience. It can be, frankly, exhilarating and scary as hell. It can be exhilarating because there's this open space, both literally on stage and figuratively in the sense of what narratives or possibilities that could emerge. There's openness, there's hope, there's possibility, there's curiosity, there's opportunities for discovery, and tons of opportunities for creating. At the same time, it can be super nerve wracking. Why? Because we have no idea what was going to happen. We didn't write a script in advance. We didn't plan it. We don't know what's going to happen next. We're going to maybe fail, make a mistake, or screw up, or it won't be as successful if we had just planned it in advance or done some preparatory work in some way. So, why would people do this? Why would people do such an activity? I'd like to suggest that improv is a powerful opportunity to remind us that we create our worlds rather than merely we participate in them or we live in them or we attend them or we merely show up for them. When actors or improvisers improvise their scenes, games, stories, there's likely no more than a couple of chairs on stage, one or more scene partners to build with, and the rest takes care of itself from there. They practice the art of improv, the practice of building their games and or stories through the practice of yes and. Cleverly printed on the t-shirt that I'm wearing for this live stream. How do they do that? What is this yes and idea? Perhaps you've heard of it also. Yes and within the context of improv is the practice of affirming and building. Yes is the practice of affirming and is the practice of building or extending. In other words, if we don't have a script, if we didn't plan anything in advance, if we're not sure what's going to happen, yet we can make it happen, we can draw upon this practice of yes and to affirm whatever is emerging, whatever is coming up, and do something with it, and create with it, and build on it. And magically, we'll do something together. We'll create a game, we'll create a conversation, we'll create a story, we'll create, in some cases for improv, a long form 30-minute multi act play right there on the spot. And groups, maybe more than two, sometimes ensembles of 5 to 10 people, will do this for audiences regularly to varying success levels night after night. But they're driven to create together and they're inspired by the practice of yes and to do so. I've been doing in some form improvisational theater or improv for almost now 25 years. Wow. I officially began the practice of improv theater training, rehearsal, and performance back when I moved to Chicago in 2001. So 23 and a half years, as the date of this video suggests 2024. And I went to Chicago to study and perform improv because I was super curious about how people could create something together, whether it be comedy or whether it occur in other contexts. I didn't necessarily just want to go and be a famous actor or do funny things or learn funny tools to make people laugh or impress them with my quick wit or quick thinking skills. I was amazed by what I saw when I would see a group of improvisers build something together and implicitly or explicitly draw upon yes and to do so. So I wanted to know more. And in the spirit of today's live stream, I didn't necessarily want to just know more. I really wanted to do something with it. I wanted to be a creator and build improv practices in my own life. And so I spent a glorious dozen years in Chicago learning improv, taking classes, performing in local productions, doing it in applied ways, not just for theater audience members or fellow improvisers, but I brought improv to my teaching, to my work with youth and nonprofits, to my work with colleagues in academia and in community work. And I brought not necessarily only particular improv games or forms or story making patterns, but I brought a practice of yes and. I invited, whether it was my scene partner in my ensemble, students in my class, or colleagues, to value the practice of affirming and building. I think before we say any more about the power of affirming and building, we should remind ourselves and celebrate how rare it is to live in worlds where we do those two things with what people give us. That is, we're often not affirming what's in our world, we're rejecting it, we're negating it, we're acting like it doesn't exist, and we're maybe not trying to build with it, we're trying to change it only, or we're trying to negate it in some way, or we're trying to critique it in some way. There's something wholly developmental, wholly inspirational about building with what's with and in our worlds and who is in our worlds, regardless of appraising whether such people or life experiences or events are worth building with. That, for me, is one of the powers of building groups as a way of transforming our world. Imagine more about building groups not just because of identity factors or by dint of being told to work on something together, but what if we could support the co creating of groups that aren't just individual students coming together for a project or individual work colleagues tasked with a particular job responsibility, but who practiced the art of building their group of colleagues, classmates, and other groups with the practice of yes and. Therefore, we can see improv not just as a tool for actors, improvisers, comedians, artists, funny folks, quick thinkers, but a practice that we can all do and do in our lives. Yet we often don't know we should or can because we feel overly determined by scripts. We feel overly determined by existing narratives. We feel overly determined by the worlds as they appear to be, and that we must merely exist in them. Building groups with improv, supporting them to grow as a group with and through yes and transforms our world because we embrace what's being available, what someone is giving us, what our world is making available, and we wonder with openness, with curiosity, with possibility, what we can do to extend and transform what is. It shifts from a critical perspective of critique to a more practical critical activity. By that I mean we move away from wondering about evaluating the world, giving a certain thumbs up or thumbs down, grading someone either as pass or fail, hiring or firing, or some kind of other exclusion or inclusionary practice, to a more collective co creating that supports us to say, let's build with this. How can we build with this? How can I use the practice of yes and to create more activity where we can explore what's being made available, where we can wonder about what is happening in our scenes, life world, in our life scenes, and how we can perhaps create something together that supports us all to grow. I think that's very powerful. I hope you do too. It moves us away from merely being in environments, in groups, in communities, to co creating them, to building them together. And all it takes is two little words: yes, and. There are few words, and yet they're powerful. Another tool that I thought we could practice and wonder a little bit about in this live stream is the practice of social therapeutics. Social therapeutics. Social therapeutics is a non diagnostic tool that helps groups grow emotionally and socially. It's a powerful challenge to the overly determined psychological models of diagnosis, labeling the individual, the past, and focuses on the group, the possible, the future, the historical, the co creating, the non diagnostic, the non labeling. Already, I hope you're feeling a family resemblance to improv and our discussions of it. While social therapeutics may not be a for a stage theater kind of experience like you might see at a comedy show or in a theater, in many ways, the practice of social therapeutics is a therapeutic healing activity where groups come together to create their social and emotional development. Much also like improv, they don't know time after time what they're going to focus on or how they're going to create the group gatherings, what's going to be discussed, and how it's going to go. They create emergently together. And while they may not be specifically trained in or given practice in the work of yes and from improv theater, the building of groups social therapeutically comes from the practice of saying yes and to all that the group gives when they come together. Say, for example, someone comes to a group and they've been feeling a particular kind of way, whether it be anxious, depressed. They might give that to the group and not necessarily look for a solution or an agreement with what's going on, but they might find ways where people can collectively create with what's being given emotionally about that person's feelings of anxiety or depression. So perhaps the group might start going, let's explore this anxiety that you're bringing. What does it look like for you? What is your anxiety like? What else is possible? You say you have anxiety. What does it mean to have anxiety? Is having anxiety similar to when someone says they have a home or have two brothers? Can you give your anxiety to someone, much like you give food or gifts to someone? You can see how there's playfulness in such a kind of wondering together. The groups don't try to fix or address a problem because it may not already be one. They philosophically play with whatever the group gives, helping the group to see new ways of seeing the world, new ways of feeling, new ways of understanding themselves, and new ways of relating to each other. A coach supporting this social therapeutic group moves less so from the person with all the information or all the tools for the group to take on and use and becomes a co creator of the group's growth and healing by asking such philosophical curiosity questions, by asking the group to focus on relationality, emotionality, to honor that this is a group creating itself improvisationally, and to let go of the need to know what's going on or how well it's going or what each person is supposed to do each time. It's very much, in my experience, like an improvisational ensemble. They come together and create. They come together and do so emergently. They come together and create the group and its development without being overly attuned to what's going on, how well it's going on, what everything means, what identity labels people are assigning themselves or others, but focuses on building the group and collectively doing so as a way for everyone to get the perhaps help or healing that they might need. That's a powerful shift. Often within therapeutic or coaching programs, the focus is often on the individual and their problems, their diagnosis, their needs, their search for healing or solutions to their issues. While that might happen in a social therapeutic group, the focus is on building the group. The focus is on the collective activity of supporting the group as our focus. And in doing so, everyone heals, develops, grows, and learns because they're actively creating what the group needs. And what the group is creating is a function of what everyone is doing, not just what the person with the problem needs or just what the coach or therapist can give to them. I've been also practicing social therapeutics for about 20 years now, mainly as a person that brings this approach to my classes or to my work environments by supporting my classes to move beyond, for example, 30 individual students competing or vying for better grades, my attention, or other individual focuses, to the importance of building a collective activity together. Conversation, for example, group explorations of course topics, our emotionality, our humanity, even. I've also done some more specific focus on becoming a social therapeutic coach more recently. In fact, in the past year, I finished a social therapeutic coaching program where I observed social therapeutic groups and co led one. It's been a powerful experience to see a group of people that are not bound by identity, that are not bound by their histories, that are not limited in what they already know or believe about the world, but come together week after week, month after month, sometimes for years on end, to support the group to grow, to support new possibilities, to support new opportunities, to support new emotions, to support social and community change. I can see this practice not just in therapeutic or schools. I know groups are bringing social therapeutics to business contexts, for example. I wonder about social therapeutics and improv, by the way, as a way to heal our political divides or our geopolitical strifes. I hope you felt that in these two tools of improv and social therapeutics that we can feel new possibilities for group building and feel inspired to try so. If you'd like to know more, if you'd like to explore the power of improv, the power of social therapeutics to build groups as near and dear to your hearts and as far reaching as you can imagine, then I'd love to hear back from you and I'd love to create more with you. As we close, I thought I would just show you a way that you can keep in touch with me. First, feel free if you would like to comment on this live stream, ask a question, offer a comment, make a suggestion, give your curiosity, give your frustrations, give your wonders, and perhaps people will build with it. I know I will. Another way we can keep in touch or keep building groups that transform our world is if you'd like to check out my website. I'll do a quick screen share to show you it. Go to lukeperrone.com, www.lukeperrone.com. And here's just a little preview of the site. I worked with a wonderful web designer here on Maui in the state of Hawaii to build this site. And I'd love to have you play with this site and explore more about these tools of improv and social therapeutics. I won't go through the whole site right now. I'll invite you to explore, but know that the site has particular offerings like coaching opportunities or improv play shops. You can read more about improv and social therapeutics via publications that I've authored or co authored. And you can also get to know me a little bit more, in addition to the information I might have shared about my life as an improviser and as a social therapeutic coach. But you can also go to the website and go to the contact page and scroll down. Up, just give me a sec. Scroll down and send me a little message. Reach out. Wonder about how we can work together, or in the spirit of today's live stream, maybe play together. You can send any message through here. And if you're also interested, you can also set up a connection call with me. What I mean by that is you can also go to the Meet Luke page, get to know me a little bit, as I said, and you can set up a free connection call. Maybe you're like, this webinar or this live stream, excuse me, gave me some things to wonder about, and I'm curious how I might bring them to my work environment or family or just in my own personal work. What can I do? How can we create more together? Feel free to set up a connection call with me. It's a free 30-minute opportunity to chat online or over the phone to explore more about maybe what piqued your curiosity from the website, from this live stream, and maybe we can discuss ways to keep building together. To set up that connection call, go to Connect with Luke. Just click on that button right there and find a date and time that serves you to join in on a chat with me, and we'll build together from there. And I would love to hear from you, whether it's from the YouTube channel or from my website. I think the invitation is to, in the spirit of today's webinar or live stream, excuse me, is to say, how can we keep building groups? How can we be the practice of building groups that transform our worlds? Whether those worlds be our families, our classmates, our colleagues, our students, our family members, our neighbors, and more. Let's go back as we close to that question we started with at the beginning of the live stream. Think about the groups that you've been a part of or been building, and how might you build with them in new ways, with new tools, with new curiosities in light of this live stream today? How might yes and come into this practice moving forward for you? How might building with the group's emotions and being curious philosophically with what people give you support the group to grow, whether it's at a family dinner, a business meeting, or your next class? And how can these be the practices that not only change you, but change the world? I would love to hear from you. I thank you for checking out this live stream, and I look forward to what and how we keep creating moving forward. Onward, and thank you, everybody.